Hi, so in this video we're gonna take a look at a script for MPV player that I wrote, with the help of which you can edit videos by using MPV player. This is sort of like a little known feature of MPV player, and it's quite interesting. So I made a script to help like create those edit files that they're basically just text files that are formatted in a specific way, and then MPV pulls parts of different files that you specified in that text file, parts of different video files or audio files or whatever, and it puts them together as a virtual file and it just plays it as though it was a video. So that's a pretty cool feature, and so let's jump right in and explore it. Here's my script. It is called ab-loop-to-edl-segment.lua. So one thing to mention right away is that it has a dependency, and I covered this in another video that I made about a couple of other scripts that have the same dependency. So like these scripts, copy file name, copy subtitle, and copy timestamp.lua, they also all use the same way, like to copy things to your system's clipboard, and so like watch the video that I made about those scripts to figure out this part about this dependency. It's gonna be let me see. So like this is gonna be the playlist that I'll put these videos in. So like the first one will be the intro, or like the third one in this playlist as you see it. So the third one will be the introduction, where I explain to how to set the options and remap key bindings and things like that, and how to install scripts as well. And the fourth one will be the one about these copy subtitle, timestamp, and file name scripts, and you can watch that to get more information about these dependencies and what to do for different operating systems. Or you can also read this part of the README file, which explains it as well. Let's move on to other things. Basically, just as a quick example to show you what it looks like, basically the EDL file. So yeah, if you go to this like first line, which is the description of the script, it has this link for EDL. It'll direct you to this specification of the EDL format, which you can read, and I already have it open over here. So basically, just before I talk about the specification itself, let me just create a quick EDL file to show you how it works. So like the first line will always be this, and so I'll copy it to the clipboard, and let me see. So let me create like an EDL file. By the way, EDL stands for edit decision list. So that's what that means. So I'll call the file just edit.edl, and the first line will be this. So that always has to be like that, and then we'll put our segments that we'll create by using my script. So let's open up a video and take a look at what we can do. So I'll just navigate to the second subtitle line because it's just kind of a nice long-ish segment. I'll use my other script that is called ab-loop-set-points.lua. I covered that in the previous video in this series, so there's going to be the video before this one in this playlist. All the links will be in the description. So ab-loop-set-points, like the name suggests, it allows you to set a loop for a part of the video. So I'm going to just use its function one of its functions, which is to set the loop to the current subtitle line. So basically, I'll loop this line. I'll press Shift Alt L to do this, and now the current subtitle line is looped.
Every second, we create huge amounts of data. Some see just a lot of numbers. Every second, we create huge amounts of data. Some see just a lot of numbers.
So it's looping. Now we basically what the ab-loop-to-edl-segment.lua script does is it uses the currently set loop and it converts it to the EDL segment. I mean, like the name suggests. So the default shortcut is Control X. So if I press Control X, you saw that like there was a message that appeared over there, which showed what it copied. But let's now go into our file and just paste what was copied there. And so let's just save that and let's take a look. So what it copies, the first line is a comment. Let me see if I can, like, oh, there we go. This is better, so that the comments are gray and now it's easier to see. So yeah, the first line is just a comment that it copies that just like to let you know like what file it was copied from, and then the segment itself, like this, its start point and its end point. And then there's this line that is formatted in the EDL format that shows you like the first part before this comma is the file name, and I'll explain what this number in the beginning does in a second. It's quite important to know that, but let's skip that for the time being. Then the second parameter is the starting point of the loop. So the loop starts at, so I can navigate to the beginning of the loop by using my ab-loop-seek-points script. The shortcut for that is Control semicolon. And again, I covered that script in the previous video in the series. So I navigated to the beginning of the loop, and it's at 4 seconds point 523 milliseconds, and that's what we have here. For some reason it says 522, but like that's what it is. And then the third parameter is the length of that segment. So it's not like, you know, like it's not like the start and the end of the loop. So it's not like 9.923, which is the end point, but it's instead it's the length of that segment in seconds with milliseconds. So that's how the format works. And then it also has the title, which is just basically the same thing as in the comment. And so what the title parameter does is it will show up in the chapters list of that EDL file when we play it. So let's try playing it. I'll close that video for the moment, and let's open. So let's go npv edit.edl.
Every second we create huge amounts of data. Some see just a lot of numbers.
So there we go. That's our the segment of that video that we were looking at. And if we take a look at the list of chapters, which I have set to F10, I don't remember if it's the default shortcut, but basically the title parameter here it sets the name of that chapter, and you can see it in the list of chapters. It basically creates, by default, it creates a chapter for each segment, but there is a way to disable it too. We'll get into that in a second. But basically, yeah, so this is kind of a general format of an EDL file. So let's go back to to the specification. So we talked about the general format. So like we already talked about, the first parameter is the file name, the second one is the starting point of that segment, and the third one is the length of the segment. This can also be set to chapters. So like if a file has chapters, you can use that's somewhere down here. So yeah, like in this timestamp format section, you can add this parameter timestamps equals chapters, and then you can use the starting chapter and then kind of again the length of that segment, but not in seconds with milliseconds, but in chapters. Like it says here, it plays chapter 3 and ends with the start of the chapter 7, 4 chapters later. So like, and the reason it says 2 and not 3 is because the numbering of the chapter starts with 0. So it's the third chapter, and then it plays 4 chapters ahead from that point. So that's another way, but otherwise it's seconds and milliseconds. So let's see. So let's go back to our example file and let's add another range, or not range but segment. They're called segments. So let's open our video and let's just pick some other subtitle line, like this one for example. I'll press Shift-Alt-L to loop it, and then Control X to copy it, just like we did before. And now I can close this, and I can paste that segment in our EDL file. So let's now open the EDL file. So now we have 2 segments.
Every second.
And if I open up the on-screen controller, you can see that there's like this mark over here, which is a chapter. So like if I press F10, you can see that there's now two chapters there. So yeah, for each segment, it adds a chapter. Also, like if the file that you're copying from happens to have a chapter in your segment, that chapter will also be copied. So that's how that works. You can disable those chapters by setting a header like that's goes like this, just an exclamation mark, and then no underscore chapters. So now if I save it, there are no chapters anymore. No chapters, there we go. So that's how we can disable those chapters. So that's that. So it's really worthwhile to read through this document because it explains kind of it's good to understand the format of that file. Because for example, yeah, like, okay, I said that I would talk about this number in the beginning, what it does. So let's talk about that. So basically this the string consists of parameters that are comma separated, and but what if like the file name has a comma, right? Then it's gonna break. So this number between 2 percent signs in the beginning, it just gives MPV information explicitly on how long this parameter is. So it tells it to count 76 bytes for the first parameter. So that's kind of like why I created a script for that, because like sometimes you would have a file like with weird characters in its name, like, and actually the characters are listed over here. So we're concerned with the value string, and so if it contains either a comma, a semicolon, a new line, or an exclamation mark, that parameter will not work, basically. And then you need, then you have to put this number between two percent signs in the beginning, in order to show the MPE how long that parameter is, so that it can parse it correctly. So yeah, that's basically what this script allows you to automate. But so yeah, and it gives you some examples here. It's good to read through this to understand this thoroughly. So there's one thing that I haven't implemented in the script yet, but I can see that it might be useful to have that. And specifically that it's in the specs, it talks about that thing in this separate files for tracks section. So basically you can, for example, you can have separate streams that you can put together so that they would play at the same time. So kind of like if you imagine like Kdenlive or other graphical video editor, it would be like your timeline and you would have separate tracks, and you can do that here as well. So you can have two separate tracks, or however many you want, and then you can copy or you can play, have a very sophisticated edit like that. You can even, just as a sort of an additional point, you can even put EDL files as a file, as this file could be also an EDL file. So you can create a small edit and then include it into a larger edit. You can do things like that. But one thing that I kind of think that I would like to implement is basically allow, if I'm copying something like we did over here, if I have a subtitle line, I would also like it to capture the subtitle track, so that the EDL file also has a separate track for the subtitle, so that then the EDL can read from that subtitle. And I haven't really tested it yet, but according to the specs, this should be possible, because here it has an example where it does exactly this. It has one track, then the new stream header, which adds a new stream, like it explains over here in this simpler example, and then it has a subtitle track. So you can also have basically the same segment for the subtitle, and that way it will also read from the subtitle file. And this is kind of it can be useful for for example, for language learners, if you have a video with a subtitle, with a subtitle file, and you want to just review parts of that video, just lines and just parts of it that you found interesting, and you would also like to see the subtitle in your EDL edit, then you can do that. So this might be something that I'm gonna add to the script in the future, but at the moment it's not there. But you can of course edit it manually, and that's a bit of a I mean, it would probably be something like, all right, so I figured it out. It's a bit more complicated than I thought, but you have to create separate EDL files for the video track and for the subtitle track, because if you put them all in one file, it doesn't work. So I guess that's just kind of how it is. You just have to use just the file name, and that's it. And then you have to create your edits for the subtitle, for the video and for the subtitle in separate files, and then you can put them together and then
Every second, we create huge amounts of data. Some see just a lot of numbers. At the same time, the data represents our daily experiences.
everything plays correctly. So and it shows up correctly as like a subtitle track, so you can just like hide it and show it just like you would do normally. Um, so yeah, that works, but it's a bit complicated. So I'm not sure like how to implement it yet. But yeah, I mean, it is possible. So it is interesting. Like there might be some uses for it. But okay, let's see what else we have here. So I talked about the new stream header. Now, so you can also add metadata. I'm not going to go into this, but there's basically global metadata that you can add, and then there is also somewhere in here there was a section about like track metadata. There we go. So there's like some metadata that you can add. Title being one of those, like we already saw that, but there's also other things that you can add, like a language, for example. So that's there as well. Now let's take a look at what the script can do beyond what I showed you up to this point. So there's four shortcuts, and so far I've only been using the first one. Now the second one is called I should rename this. This should say segment, not range, but I forgot to rename it because I renamed the script because that's like what they're called, like not ranges but segments. I'll change it when I release this video. So it's gonna be ab-loop-to-edl-segment copy path, and the second one is called ab-loop-to-edl-segment copy path alternate. And what alternate refers to is basically by default, like this like non-alternate would be your relative path to the file. So let me kind of get rid of all this subtitle stuff that we experimented with and just like delete that and close these files. So yeah, by default the kind of the non-alternate, so this control X, this first shortcut, copies, I need to open the video, it copies the relative path, and so that's what we have in our EDL file over here. So the relative path to the file. So if you want to store your EDL file in the location that you just like opened your MPV player in, like I'm doing right now, like I have this edit.edl in this folder, and relative to this folder it will look and open data explained in a nutshell and so on, and there it is, like over here. So that's if you want to store the EDL file in that folder and you won't move it, like just like the folder has a set structure and you won't be moving the EDL file out of it. Like if I move the EDL file, then the file won't play because this relative path won't be correct anymore. So the alternate allows you to copy the absolute path instead. So let me select that same subtitle line, loop it, and press Ctrl Alt X. And now, if I go back to my file and I paste that stuff, you can see that the path is different, but the rest of it is the same. So yeah, now it included the absolute path, so you can move the EDL file freely on your system, and it will always point to that file. As long as the file stays in place, it will work. So like depending on what you need, you might prefer one or the other. And the reason I call it alternate and not like absolute path and relative path is like, I don't know, sometimes you might sort of like change your mind about which one you would prefer and like which one you want to be the alternate. So like by default, I set the relative path to be the non-alternate and the absolute path as the alternate. But you can swap those around and you can set this option absolute path by default and set it to true, and then control X would copy the absolute path instead, and the alternate would be the relative path. So that's one thing about this script and what it can do. Now you can also use these Control V and Control Alt V shortcuts to write to a file. And there's like two ways to do that basically. You can have this default output file name, which I set to edit.edl, and you can enable basically by default so that like it doesn't create any unnecessary files like accidentally. Control V like won't do that. It'll say just no output file name specified. So like if write to default output file were set to true, it would write always like to this file. Maybe you want the script to always create this file for you, and that would be like the preferable way for you to do it, and you want to always like be able to write to it as well, like whenever you want by just pressing Control V or Control Alt V as the alternate for like the relative or absolute, depending on how you set this option, just like I explained for these two shortcuts. So yeah, if you want to always that default file to be available by pressing Control V, you can set this to true, and you can rename this file to whatever you want. That will be your default file, and it will always write to it. That's like one way to write to a file. You can also just set the output file name that will like override all of this like default file name business, and then it will write to that file specifically. But that's more like something if you wanted to. Let's just like do this for just to show it as an example. That's probably something that you might want to set probably only on the command line. In the config file it would make more sense to just like configure the default file name way, and then you could always override it on the command line by using this other option. So this script ops dash where is the ID? ab-loop-to-edl-segment. Like passing options to MPV scripts is admittedly a bit clunky, but not a big deal. Like if you kind of get used to it a bit. Output file name equals let's just call it new.edl, and let's what did I it's script opts. So let's just like loop some random subtitle line and then press Control V, so it said appended to new EDL. So if I close this now, I have this new.edl file that got created, and I can open it in Vim here, and you see that it created the header for you as well, and it appended the line to that file. So that's another way to work with it instead of copying to clipboard. So, and finally, the last thing that I want to mention is how to render your edited video from MPV. so that like you don't have just the EDL file, but a rendered out video that you can do whatever you want with. If we look at NPV's manual, we can search for, I believe it was called rendering. Yes, it's called encoding. But the point is that here you can take a look at all of the options that you need to know in order to convert videos in MPV. And like for EDL files, that's just kind of how you can render them out into a video. So I'm not gonna like go into any of these options. That's something that like the topic of its own, and like I haven't really gone into it very deeply myself. I just played around with a couple of them. But basically, if you just go --o equals file name, it will render out your video. We have that edit.edl ready, and you can go and say --o equals edit dot, let's go mkv, and so now we have a file there, and we can just or mpv edit.mkv.
Every second, we create huge amounts of data. Some see just a lot of numbers. At the same time, the data represents our daily experiences.
So as you can see, the video has rendered, everything's working. It didn't include the chapters for some reason, but I guess that's just something that only works from the EDL file. You can potentially create like a script to export the chapter into the separate file, but I'm not gonna go into it in this video. So yeah, this is basically pretty much it. That's what I wanted to cover here. I find this like functionality really interesting, just like to be able to edit a video in a text file. It's kind of cool. So yeah, this is pretty much it. I hope you found this video interesting and valuable, and I'll see you in the next one.